Hey there, and welcome to another video on music appreciation. Today we're going to be talking about Impressionism, or also known as the Impressionist period, which lasted from 1860 to 1900. Impressionism itself is a style of music that was initiated, or being produced, for lack of better words, by Claude Debussy. During the end of the 19th century. The term Impressionism is more vague in reference to music, but it was introduced by analogy and contemporaneous French paintings. During this time, a lot of paintings were being made, a lot of art was being pushed out during this time, more so than not. However, Debussy did not like this kind of approach due to the elements of impressionistic, including static harmony, emphasis on instrumental timbres, creating somewhat of an interplay of colors, melodies that directed no real motion. It lacked that motion that you would have in a melody, whether it be fast or slow, or however you would create music from melodies as you would. And then surface ornamentation too, that obscured or substituted for melodies, and avoided traditional means of creating music. However, he still continued on progressing this new style of music, and was aided by another impressionist by the name of Maurice Ravel. And together they started referencing music pieces that they made from other earlier works by Frederick Chopin, Franz Liszt, and Richard Wagner, and also included people such as Charles Ives, Bela Bartok, and some other composers and musicianists from this time. And speaking of paintings, there was a lot of paintings going around during the later part of 1859 to 1860, and so on. As we go through these different eras or different years, you'll see that a lot of paintings were involved, and a lot more of the famous arts were known during this time. And along with the arts, if you don't know it yet, but you might now, because I'm going to explain it to you, a lot of these eras that we covered from the past topics divulge in together as one. So it's like I was saying earlier, from like the Baroque and classical period being together as one, but it's of different cultures. Excuse me, different cultures combining their architectures and their works of art and music together as one. And really, the world started to culminate all of these different kinds of styles and all these kind of different works as sort of a way to remember what was during the earlier days, and remember the years past as life goes on, and just a way to kind of preserve history as well during these different eras, like the Baroque and classical, and now we have the Impressionist period, which is no different. But we'll start with the beginnings of this period from 1860. So this is when a painter by the name of Monet comes to Paris and studies at Susie's studio, where he also meets Bessario. He is then conscripted into the army, serves in Algeria, catches typhoid fever, and returns to Le Havre, and then finally returns back to Paris to study at another studio by a person that's named Glare, which is also named Glare Studio. He is then provided with an allowance on the condition that he tries to obtain entry to the École des Beaux-Arts, which is also called the Fine Arts School. Fast forward to 1866, Monet's work, Woman in the Green Dress, is accepted by the Salon's jury and receives positive reviews. This is basically at the Salon and war years, which is where Monet's work was starting to be accepted but also rejected at the same time with critical reviews. Monet was still reeling from previous year's criticism from 1866. And then in 1867, Monet's work, Woman in the Garden, is rejected by the Salon's jury. Monet first floats the idea of the Impressionists exhibiting together, but the plan is taken no further due to a lack of funds. Then if we fast forward again to 1874, the first Impressionist exhibition is held. Main organizers were Monet, Pissarro, Degas, with additional exhibitors including Renoir, Cézanne, and Berthe Morisot. Then Monet refused to take part, preferring to focus on conquering the Salon. And then we go into September 5th of 1879, which is where Camille Monet, Monet's first wife, dies at 32 years of age, leaving Monet with 2 children to care for. Camille's death came during a terrible period for Monet. One of his main patrons, Ernest Horshed, was declared bankrupt a few years earlier, and Monet and the Horshed families had moved in together to economize. Monet was left sending scores of letters to friends and the collectors begging for money. He became obviously broke and needed some funds or not funds, but money to take care of not only his family, but the Horshed family as well. Then if we go to 1886, the 8th and final Impressionist exhibition is held. About 2 years before that, there was a posthumous exhibition of Monet's works being held at the Lavore. The 8th and the final Impressionist exhibit back in 86 was held, but Monet, Renoir, and Sicily refused to participate. As such, final exhibition wasn't really some fanfare to dedicate decades worth of independent exhibitions from previous years. Through Morisot and Pissarro exhibit as usual, the most famous work to be shown was Georges Seurat's La Grande Jadet. And then fast forward to 1890s, Monet starts to work on his Water Lily series, which would be more of artistic focus and of precision for about the rest of his life. In total, he painted more than 250 versions of the Water Lilies, and by this stage, a demand for Monet's work had increased exponentially, and the trend would continue until it got to about over $80 million. So with that all being said, as you go on through the later years, you'll start to see a reoccurrence of exhibitions happening of people selling their paintings, and these expeditions of where people would start to paint and then they would sell, and then the process would repeat itself all over again. It almost happened year-round, too, after every other exhibition and expedition as well. Um, this period, like I mentioned before, was from 1860 to 1900, but it's actually perversed until the 21st century to this day. But it really didn't get its recognition in this day and age as it did back then when it was first made, or when it first occurred. And as you go past the 1900s and into World War I and the 1920s and 30s, you'll start to see this kind of style of art and music persevere until the later centuries. So Maurice Ravel was born on March the 7th of 1875 in France, and he also died in France on December 28th, 1937 in Paris. And as you know, he's a French composer of Swiss and Basque descent. If you didn't know that, now you know. He is noted for his style in such works as Bolero in 1928, Pavane pour une infante defunte, 1899, and Rhapsody Espagnole in 1907. Sorry if I get these wrong the first time. I don't speak French, so that's that to contend with. Ravel was born in a village near Saint John de Luz, of France, of course. His father being Swiss, mother being Basque. His family was more of an artistic, cultivated family, so they liked to paint a lot and make music and all kinds of things, music and art related. But his father noticed that he had skill in making music in 1899. This is when he first discovered that he could make music very, very well. When he was 14, he entered the Paris Conservatoire, where he remained until 1905. During this time, he composed some of his best works, which is the Sonatine for piano and the string quartet. All of these works, especially the later two, showing an astonishing earlier perfectionist work of his style and craftsmanship that are the hallmarks of Ravel's entire oeuvre. Even though later on he would try to attempt this, he would actually fail at the Conservatoire after 3 attempts to win the Prix de Rome in this competition for composition. This caused an outrage, and there would be protests about it that were publicized, and were liberal-minded musicians and writers, including the musicologist and novelist Romain Rolland, who actually supported Ravel and thought that he should have won that coveted prize. But apparently, of course, that didn't happen, and this was a result that Theodore Dubois, who was the director of the Conservatoire, was forced to resign, and his place was taken by the composer Gabriel Fauré, with whom Ravel had studied composition with. Ravel was in no sense really a revolutionary musician. Like I said before, he partook in the progression of Impressionism with Claude Debussy, so he was more of kind of like a side character, almost, if you wanted to put it in like story terms. He was really the most part content in working within the established formal and harmonic conventions of his time. The organization of music around focal tones, very professional and personal, and also individual, was his adaptation and manipulation in traditional music idioms. It would be true to say that he also forged for himself a language of his own that bears the stamp of his personality as more unmistakably as any work of Bach or Chopin. He was responsible for enriching the literature in the piano by a series of masterworks ranging from the early Jeux d'Oie, which was completed in 1901, and the Mirrors of 1905, to the formidable Gaspard de la Nuit of 1908, the Tombeau de Capourian of 1917 during World War I, and two piano concerti of 1931. Of his purely orchestrated works, the Raspodi, Espagnol, and Bolero are the best known and reveal his mastery of the art of instrumentation. Moving on to Claude Debussy, which again responsible for making the music in Impressionism during his time. He was born on August the 22nd of 1862 in France and died on March 25th, 1918 during World War I in Paris, same place that Ravel died as well. He was a French composer whose works were a seminal force in the music of the 20th century. He was responsible for developing a highly original system of harmony and musical structure that expressed many respects to the ideals of which Impressionists and Symbolist painters and writers of his time aspired to base their works off of and aspired to be. His major works included Clair de Lune, Moonlight, and Suite Bergamasque of 1890 to 1905, Prelude et la Arpresse Midi de une Faune, 1894, and the opera Pelléas et Melisande of 1902, to list a few. He was encouraged by Madame Maute de Fleverville, who was associated with the Polish composer Frederick Chopin, and in 1873 he entered the Paris Conservatory, just like Ravel did, which is where he studied the piano and composition, eventually winning the prize in 1884 with his cantata of El Enfant Protégé, the Prodigal Child. Debussy's youth was spent in circumstances more of a great turbulence, you could say. He was almost overwhelmed by situations of great extremes. He wasn't really a spiritual person, but he was more material and more of an emotional guy. His parents were more of a poor sort in the suburbs of Paris, and that's where he would be unexpectedly came under the patronage of Russian millionaires, such as Nadezhda Filaritoven von Meck, who engaged him to play duets with her and her children. He traveled with her to palatial residence throughout Europe during the long summer vacations at the conservatory. In Paris during this time, he fell in love with a singer named Blanche Vaznier, a young wife of an architect. She inspired many of his early works. His early style is well illustrated in one of his best-known compositions, Clair de Lune. The title refers to a folk song that was the conventional accompaniment of scenes of the lovesick Pierrot in the French pantomime. And indeed, the many Pierrot-like associations in Debussy's music would later be notable in orchestral work Images in 1912 and the Sonata for cello and piano in 1915. Originally titled Pierrot face avec la lune. His show connections with the circus also spirited that appeared in works by other composers, notably the ballet Petrushuk of 1911 by Igor Stravinsky, and Pierrot Lunaire by Arnold Schwarzenberg. So that's it for my musical background and historical background. The two songs that I picked are from both Claude Debussy. The first one that I chose was Ballade L70, and the second one I chose was Reverie L68, part of a series that Debussy did back when he was working on his earlier musics. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative, and I hope that you learned something from it. And you all have a great rest of your day, okay? I'll see you later.